Welcome everyone to Conversations of the Heart. My name is Jessica Gaines. I'm the program coordinator at Green Acre. These fine folks will be introduced to you here in a second. This is Conversations of the Heart. It's a Zoom program that the Bahá'í Publishing Trust and Green Acre puts together in collaboration, where we bring you really fantastic authors who've written about a whole host of things, from specific issues regarding the history of the Baha'i faith to the dynamics of race and racism and the oneness of humanity, and to sustainability and our relationship as stewards of the earth, etc. And today we're very, very blessed to have two very distinguished authors with us, Dr. Richard Thomas and Frederick Landry. And my friend Chris Martin over here from the Bahá'í Publishing Trust will give them a proper introduction in a moment. I just want to let you all know that if you've never been to Green Acre or you don't know about Green Acre is really dedicated to becoming, in the words of Abdul Baha, who is the son of Baha'u'llah, he said that he knows that Green Acre will become the standard bearer of the oneness of humanity. So everything that Green Acre does these days is really motivated by that drive to become the standard bearer of the oneness of humanity. We're a center of learning where families, friends, collaborators of all different backgrounds come together to contribute to applying the Baha'i principles of justice, peace, and the oneness of humanity to build a diverse and united society. And we're so lucky to be able to collaborate with the Bahá'í Publishing Trust, who brings us these great authors. And I'm so glad to see that people are talking to each other in the chat. That's what we want. We want you all to talk with each other as Dr. Thomas and Frederick are talking. We want to hear what your thoughts are. Share when they say something, you're like, oh, that was fantastic. Say that, put it in the chat. We want to know what your thoughts are. And at the end, there will be a time for Q&A, which Chris will facilitate that Q&A. So if you've got questions for them, don't put that in the chat because we'll lose it. Put it in the Q&A box. So if you move your cursor down at the bottom, you'll see Q&A. Put it in there, and we'll take it from there. And with that, I'm going to stop talking because you're not here to hear me. You're here to hear these guys. So I'm going to pass it over to Chris, and he was going to give a proper introduction to our guests.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Really appreciate it. Dear friends, it's great to have you here today to celebrate the launch of Anchor of Faith, the enduring spirit of the Black Men's Gathering by Frederick Landry and Richard Thomas. We're running a special discount on it through tomorrow. So if you order it this weekend through our website, Bahá'íBookstore.com, or through our Baha'i Bookstore phone app, you get a special discounted price before it goes back to regular price. It's been selling very well. So don't be alarmed if it says like out of stock on the website. You can still place your order and the book will be shipped to you when the new shipment comes in, which is going to be very soon. I'm just going to hold it up here. Got my copy. I don't know if you guys can see that. Oh, I think the blurry part, but this cover right here, you see that illustration that was made by Jimmy Collins, one of the participants.
Hey,
How
Chris,
is it?
Hold it next to your body, Chris.
Better?
There you go.
That was made by Jimmy Collins, one of the participants of the gathering. So anyway, I was the editor of this book, so of course I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's a great book. I learned a lot as I was editing about the Black Men's Gathering, this historic event, from these two gentlemen here who are the authors and who were just a lot of fun to work with. So thank you guys, Fred and Rich, for being such great authors to work with. Frederick Landry first attended the Black Men's Gathering in 2003. He works as an analyst for the U.S. General Services Administration. Mr. Landry received his law degree from the University of Melbourne and his Master of Law from Vanderbilt University, where he specialized in international criminal law. He is author of several publications and papers on collective security, including the evolution of collective security in the United Nations Charter, elements and applications that prevent collective and human security. He is also an active member of the Northern Virginia Baha'i community. Dr. Richard Thomas is Professor Emeritus of History at Michigan State University. He is author and co-author of several books on race relations, the African-American experience, and the Baha'i faith, including Understanding Interracial Unity, a study of U.S. race relations. Life for Us is What We Make It, Building the Black Community in Detroit, 1915 through 1945, and Lights of the Spirit, Historical Portraits of Black Baha'is in North America, 1898 through 2000. He was one of the original 12 men who formed the Baha'i Black Men's Gathering in 1987, and he is presently a member of the Ann Arbor Baha'i community. Everyone, please help me welcome Frederick Landry and Richard Thomas.
Well, greetings, friends. This book has been it has been a 10-year labor of love, and it has involved a lot of thinking, a lot of just struggling with what the Black Men's Gathering meant to a lot of African American men over a quarter of a century. When we first conceived of this book, and Billy invited us to his home, we decided that the theme would be transformation, because we had seen over the 25 years an enormous amount of transformation occurring. Some forms of transformation that we were not quite expecting. And so one of the things that the reader will encounter right away are specific examples to help them to understand the challenges that African American men were facing, and also by witnessing their pain and their struggles and their growth. That was a part of that transformation. The reader will come to understand just what this experience was all about. One of the things that I learned, I was at the original meeting in 1987. And one of the things that I learned from the gathering, and that the reader will get from reading it, is the vulnerability. Black men had to learn to be vulnerable, and it was something that if you were raised among Black men, if you had a very tough father, you tended not to. You had to learn how not to be vulnerable. But what we noticed in the gathering, and you will notice as you read these letters and as you read, some of the testimonies from the relatives of and friends of these men, you will learn how vulnerable they had to be in order to be honest. And so that's one of the key insights of this book.
Yeah, speaking of vulnerability, I mean, I can echo, what Richard said. I mean, that's something that I learned, and one of the, I learned how to do, it was almost it was thrust upon you in the gathering. I mean, that was what was really amazing about it, and the book really talks about that. One of the individuals that we focus on in the book, well, let me just take a step back and just say, the book itself is really, it's centered around moments throughout the 25 years, of the gathering being held. And it's told from the lens of really multiple people, multiple experiences, individuals, institutions of the Baha'i faith. So it's told from a very, obviously wide perspective and a very varied perspective to try to give the reader really an insight, almost like a bird's eye view, as if you were even there, you're present at the gathering. So that's what the format of the book, and Richard and I kind of term those, moments over the years. And so that's what you will, see in the book. And one of those moments, speaking of vulnerability, that Richard and I, thought was very indicative, and it was almost one of the many highlights of the gathering. An individual, Hassan Malouf. Many of you probably know Hassan, and Hassan, he is, his experiences come up in multiple times throughout the book. Hassan grew up. He was raised as a Baha'i. His father was incarcerated when he was essentially a baby, and he really never knew his father. And in Hassan's own words, he had a very tumultuous, childhood, and especially when he moved into being a teenager. And so, growing up, he struggled a lot. Racial identity was a challenge that he struggled with, and it wasn't till just prior to him being 18, his mother wrote to Billy Roberts and asked that, can my son be a part of the gathering? And his mother, was really wonderful. She knew what the power and the influence of the gathering, was and could be for her son. And as Billy would oftentimes do throughout the gathering, and you see these in multiple instances throughout the book, is if someone asked for their son or husband to be part of the gathering, Billy would say, well, they need to invite. They need to contact him in order to, quote unquote, be invited. And this was a way that, it allowed people to really take that initiative. And so Hassan, when he was 18, he took that initiative and asked Billy and contacted him. And what was really amazing to see, to witness, and that was what was really wonderful about being part of the gathering, and thinking about Hassan himself, was you witness transformation, not only in yourself, but in others. And in watching in 2004, when Hassan went to his first gathering, just seeing that vulnerability just thrust upon Hassan, and an emotional release, and really seeing a lot of pain being just allowed to just leave the body, and finding spiritual insight and connectedness. That was what was really it was an example of many examples of personal transformation. Now this was, like I said, Hassan, prior to the gathering, he had some concerns. He went to the gathering. Immediately after going to the gathering, he felt a real desire to go find his father. And literally the day leaving the gathering, he found himself driving to visit his incarcerated father. And so, there's a lot to unpack there. But Hassan was a great example of somebody that found really a lot of, I think, togetherness in the gathering. The gathering allowed him to let go of a lot of pain and really find the impact of the gathering and find transformation. And now, to this day, Hassan is living, overseas. He's really dedicated his life. He spent virtually all of his adult life serving the Baha'i faith in various capacities in various parts of the country and other countries abroad. So, that's Hassan, and you will find him throughout the book. And it's really neat to kind of see different moments from 2004 onward, seeing that with Hassan. Thank you.
I think another key aspect of the book that readers will find interesting, and that is the time that the brothers spent studying the guidance. BMG participants learned how to really give the guidance the kind of attention that it required, and then to exemplify that guidance in their lives. And we spent hours and hours studying the guidance. And throughout that 25-year period, it was so interesting to see how that guidance affected the transformation, of these brothers. They would go home, they would share the guidance with their fellow believers, but most importantly, they would take the time to internalize the major points of the guidance. And of course, we'll talk about that later on when we talk about how during the beginning of the 4-year plan, when the brothers read that letter in 1996 and decided that one of the main contributions that they would make to the faith would be to go to Africa, because as you all recall, the Universal House of Justice asked people of African descent, Baha'is, African American Baha'is, to travel to Africa. And that would not have been that influential had it not been for the time that the brothers spent studying the guidance and internalizing, the wisdom, of the guidance, and deciding that going to Africa, traveling to Africa, obeying the Universal House of Justice was the way that they could demonstrate the spiritual transformation that was taking place in their lives. And I think the readers will, as they go through the letters, as they go through the testimonies and what have you, when they read the letters that the brothers wrote to the House of Justice, and the letters that the House of Justice sent back to the brothers, this incredible love affair between the BMG participants and the House of Justice, that sort of a golden thread of guidance and love and what have you. I think that's one of the pearls of the book that the reader will really appreciate.
Thank you, Richard. I saw that that Hassan is with us, so it's wonderful that you're here, Hassan. One of the challenges when we wrote this book, Richard has been going to the gathering since '87. Myself since I believe I think 2002, 2003. And one of the challenges is kind of how to also keep yourself out of the book, as a participant and an author. But at Richard's insistence, I will, share something here that I would normally just keep out. There's a small segment in the book, but I did want to just share that, when I was growing up, I am what I was considered as being biracial, but I was also adopted. So I had a black father, a white mother, and was adopted into a white family. And when I think in my late teen years, my mother always was encouraging me to go to the Black Men's Gathering. And I don't think that she knew how to really describe the gathering or how to really connect me to that experience. But she knew that there was value in the gathering itself, and really how to, really what was a possibility for me as an individual, what type of, transformation really was possible. And, we can talk more about that. But since then, and I just can recall her, try to encourage me to go. And at that time, it was held actually at Lewis Gregory and not in Maine, at Green Acre. But I wasn't interested, in short. And as was said in the book, I think me being 18 years old, young, but thinking that I probably knew almost everything at the time. I just wasn't interested in attending. And it was only years later when I was serving at the Baha'i World Center that the brothers came through on a trip, came back from Africa. They came through, and I just remember being there, sitting in the seat of the Universal House of Justice and just watching these men. And it was something that, I didn't really know much about the gathering, but I could see really just spiritual strength and devotion in these men that I really had never seen before. And I am not bashful about saying this, but being part of the gathering was really the single most impactful and spiritual experience of my life. And it just being there, seeing that glimmer, that initial glimmer, and just being a onlooker, it made me want to be part of this. And I didn't know much about it, but when I came back to the States, I found my way to be part of the gathering, and really, because I knew, and it was something that, it was always one of those things where you didn't know that you were missing something, or that you longed to see that type of spiritual devotion in yourself. But when I saw it there, and like many people, when you see the spirit of the gathering, and that's what's so wonderful about the gathering, and that's what, why we wrote the book, wasn't just to showcase or just exhibit some group of individuals that experienced the gathering in the past, but also how to find really the spirit of the gathering that's still there. I mean, the title, The Enduring Spirit of the Black Men's Gathering, is what that's all about. And that really that spirit is still there and still possible. And so, yeah, thank you all. I'll turn it back over to Richard.
Yeah, that's, I had to convince Fred that his story was very, very important, because it was such an important example of transformation, you see, because many of us who were part of the gathering in the early years, we didn't have an opportunity to experience that particular type of transformation. You see, keep in mind that many of the early BMG folk had been Baha'is, since the late 50s and the early 60s. You see, and so the BMG had a different meaning to many of them. The book not only has young men like Fred, who had gone through various transformations, you see, but also it shows how they learn how to really love the faith and to dedicate themselves to the faith. And this is, I can't tell you what this meant to the larger Baha'i community as well. You're going to discover in the book, how the BMG devotional style, for example, had an incredible impact, on the larger Baha'i community. I think that historians and sociologists for years, are going to study this impact. One of the things that you would also find in the book, those of us who became Baha'is over 50 years ago, there weren't many African-American Baha'is in the faith. And whenever we would go to a Baha'i meeting, we would see one another, but we didn't want to sort of gather. And so people called it, grapes. If you were a Black Baha'i and you saw another Black Baha'i, and if you tended to kind of always congregate, then there was some, you felt self-conscious. And that the reason why, as of course, it was a form of internalized, a racism. We didn't quite know how to function in a multiracial spiritual community. You see, we didn't know how to validate our identity, our cultural and spiritual identity. Well, what the gathering did, and you'll see this in the book, and you'll see it in the testimonies. There's a section in the book that talks about testimonies, where Baha'i men say, you know, I never felt that this was my faith. I never felt that I could express my cultural interest in the faith. And you see this process of transformation where they are learning to love their Blackness. They're learning to love their unique contributions as pupil of the eye, you see, to the larger Baha'i community. And what is also amazing about this, keep in mind that in 1996, at that 10th annual Baha'i meeting, there was about 100 or more men of African descent from around the world. And during that meeting, about 45 Baha'i men decided, African-American Baha'i, decided that they wanted to go to pioneer to Africa. And that was a very profound development, because from that time on to about 2003, you had about 53 or more African-American men or men of African descent who went pioneering throughout the diaspora. And so this had an impact. And you see this in the book. This had an impact on the larger Baha'i community, as well as other communities.
Thank you, Richard. I just want to, go back and just, I wanted to address something that Heather Waldrop, she sent a chat to the hosts and the panelists, and she just talked about, tears flowing as both of us, Richard and myself, speak, talking about transformation, the process of feeling safe, revealing pain. I just want to kind of, speak from the heart here and really say that something that I've noticed over the years, and it's hard because, being part of the gathering, we talked about experiencing vulnerability, and, I could count, on probably one hand how many times I have cried since, the gathering, formally concluded in 2011 timeframe, 2012. But being part of the gathering, that vulnerability, that was, it was like ever present. Always, you just felt very vulnerable, and you felt much more, real and present, and really, I think, spiritually connected to yourself and to your family, your friends. And I think that's what was a wonderful thing about the gathering. And I think that's the thing that it's important to kind of keep that spirit there. And I love it when we get together in moments like this, because it allows you just to be really much more real and authentic. And that type of transformation is it's necessary for all of us. And but I'll get back to what I was going to say. Richard talked about some of these international experiences, and I did want to really comment that one of the wonderful things about the gathering was, how, like Richard mentioned, there was these moments all over the world that you would see influence of the gathering, taking place. Be it devotionals all over the country. Usually those were like drumming devotionals. Hush Harbor in New York is an example of that. And there were a lot of wonderful, really moments that really illustrate transformation. And there's a moment in the book, there was a person who was not a Baha'i in New York, and every week he watched a sporting event with his children. And then it conflicted with Hush Harbor, and the kids were wondering what he would do, and he was like, no, we're going to Hush Harper. We're going to this event. And, you know, there was instances like that that just, you know, just countless times that you see all over the world where brothers who attended the gathering would go back to their home countries, be it France, Australia, you know, Brazil, Jamaica, all over the world, really. And that leads me to another moment that I think is really quite touching and quite sweet. And it's really an example of, you know, it's a very concrete example of transformation that existed as a result of the gathering. I believe it was back in 2001. Billy Roberts was in Ghana at a conference of meeting of coordinators of the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program. And these coordinators came from all over West Africa. And being in this meeting, you know, Billy was invited to just attend. And there became like a visible, like a stirring in the crowd. And I think some people pointed at Billy Roberts. And there was, you know, like a little bit of a commotion. And Billy asked, you know, what was going on. And these, you know, coordinators of this the Spiritual Empowerment Program, they said, well, we know you. We met you. And Billy thought, there's no way this is possible. And but it turns out that about 10 years prior to that, when Billy and other brothers were in Liberia, they were passing out candies, engaging with some of the young children, and teaching them the faith. And 10 years later, these two boys weren't just, you know, animators, but they were coordinators of the program in their home country. And just a really amazing, you know, testament to the power of the gathering. This is one little small moment, but it's very touching, as you all probably would agree. So I will we'll end there. And I just wanted to say, you know, obviously, you know, Richard and I, it was a, you know, I'll say that, you know, this kind of concludes our formal remarks, and we have some time to maybe, you know, interact or answer any questions. But before we go there, I just wanted to say, you know, it was a really neat, you know, and Richard mentioned it was a 10-year labor of love, and we really, you know, I think that we captured the spirit of the gathering, which is a very tough thing to do. You know, when someone said, please tell me about the Black Men's Gathering, tell me what it was all about, you felt like saying, make sure you grab a chair and we need to sit down for many hours. And I think that's why, you know, it took us, that's one of the reasons why it took us so long. But no, so thank you, Richard, and thank you all for being here. And I don't know if Richard had anything else, or we can move into any questions.
Thank you, Fred and Rich. Just wanted to show the book again. Hope you guys tell me, Rich and Fred, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Is there too much of a glare from the window? Because I really want to make sure that people can see, you know, Jimmy's illustration. This is a watercolor that Jimmy did for the cover. And a lot of what Rich and Fred are saying, you know, it's in the book, and I just wanted to show you how thick it is. You know, this is 25 years of, you know, these incredible stories, and these, you know, many of you are writing in the comments that this is very emotional, that it's bringing you to tears. And, you know, these accounts, you've just heard a taste of it. This is just all in, you know, this remarkable book. And I just wanted to hold it up again. I think the cover is so beautiful. I already see a question. Who did the cover illustration? It's actually in the chat. That was Jimmy Collins. He was a participant of the gathering. I'll hold it up one more time. So
you want to tilt it just a little bit
this way?
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
Better? Awesome. Okay, so we have some questions, and I'll try to get everybody's questions answered. Some of them let's see, one of them is about the participants. It's just, I think Jessica can answer that question. Maybe, will the participants be able to see or interact with each other? I think it's just us who can see each other, the four of us. Godfrey has a question. Alawapa, dear friends, that you're here in Norway. I would like to order a copy of the book. Is it possible to ship it to me in Norway? Yes, it is. Are you able to tell me what the shipping cost to Norway will be and I add it to the additional cost of the book? Thank you. I can't tell you that, but if you go onto the Baha'i Bookstore webpage or the app and you order it, it'll automatically be added. Or if you just want to call customer service, you can ask them as well. Since you mentioned Hassan and Fred's first BMG was in 2002, and Richard, one of the original 12, it represents different generations. Could you speak to the importance of the intergenerational aspect of the gathering?
Yeah, that's a great question, because working with Fred was an interesting intergenerational challenge. We learned a lot from each other, and we had different perspectives. You know, keep in mind that those of us who were in the original group in 1987, we had gone through the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement of the 1960s. At the same time that we were Baha'is and we were struggling with our identities, trying to reconcile, you know, two powerful currents in our lives. And so when many of us became Baha'is in the 1960s, it took us some time to reconcile our search for racial justice and racial identity in a multiracial faith. You see, but these and only Fred can talk about his generation. But Fred is of the same generation of my son, and so I was the first generation Baha'i. Fred was a second or third generation Baha'i, and so we viewed the Baha'i faith from different perspectives, and we had different challenges, the faith, and that all came together, you see, in the gathering. I learned a lot, from Fred, because I have biracial grandchildren. I didn't understand how the gathering impacted that particular intergenerational cultural dynamic. Only Fred could articulate that, you see. And so there was some interesting dynamics going on between the generation. But here again, because we were so dedicated to the guidance of the House of Justice, you see, it was able to help us to reconcile those whatever intergenerational tensions existed.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines as Richard. I mean, it was, I think, me and Richard working together was, in my opinion, it was like a manifestation of like the concept of unity in diversity. We did learn a lot from each other, and I think that, we both could have probably written the book on our own, but working together, I think, created a better result and a much more, a perspective that I think really, just included a lot more than we could have on our own. And, one thing also, talking about like the intergenerational component, there were, one wonderful thing about the gathering was seeing, sons and fathers, attend. That was really inspiring to see. And cousins and, uncles and brothers. And, Kevin is one of those individuals that was able to attend the gathering with family. And that was, always quite wonderful to see. And, even, kind of talking about what Richard was saying, these different ways of seeing things. One neat thing that happened in the latter years of the gathering at Green Acre was there was the young adults the gathering, and that young adult gathering really gave more of a voice to the youth to be part of the gathering, to experience the gathering, but also to really take ownership and to feel that ownership not only in the gathering but also in the faith and how they apply the spiritual principles of the faith, but how they engage and work together, also while feeling the support of what was an older generation and older generations to them. And so it was a beautiful thing to see, but really the intergenerational aspect of the gathering spanned several generations. That was quite touching to see.
One person says, I went to only one with you, Fred, and it was transforming in that sense of group collective unity as Black men I've never experienced before. Just a comment from someone. The question here is, I hear people say there was controversy about its formation. What was that, and how did they work through it? Also, why did it and how did it end? I wasn't in the community at the time, so missed all of it and would love clarity. Wonderful presentation. Thanks.
Well, a lot of that is in the book, and so we don't want to give away all of the goodies, But let me say this: when the gathering first started, some of us who attended that first gathering in 1987, we were concerned about several issues, and of course we discussed some of these issues I discussed in the book. Keep in mind, those of us who came through the 60s and who were Baha'is at that time had been somewhat quite radical. And so, and we were very much into the Black student movement, Black Power movement. At the same time that, we were and considered ourselves dedicated Baha'is. And so when at that first meeting, when we were invited to that first meeting, some of us did not quite know if we should attend because some of us had a reputation of being, somewhat radical during the 60s and 70s. And by the time of that first meeting, we had sort of mellowed out. We had served on local spiritual assemblies, on national committees. I was, at that time, I think on several, committees. And so we said, no, we don't want to go back to this because, this might cause some, some problem. But then we received confirmation from the Universal House of Justice. And of course, Billy was a board member and then later on a counselor. And it is through Billy's great guidance and wisdom that we were able to overcome some issues. But there were some people, Black, white, Persian, what have you, who couldn't reconcile the two things. They just didn't believe that you could have an all-Black meeting, an all-Black male meeting. You see, they had some concerns about that, but it was resolved through the guidance of the House of Justice. Whenever people would say, well, you know, how can you have an all-Black male meeting? We said, well, read the letters from the House of Justice to us, you see. In effect, you know, instructing us and guiding us in this pursuit. And the House of Justice understood, this is the wisdom of the House of Justice. They understood that Black male Baha'is were going through a lot of struggle, that they reflected the struggle of the larger Black male society, you see, in the United States. And so gradually, some people began to understand that we needed the BMG to carry us through a phase so that we would be better able, you know, to contribute to the overall Baha'i community.
And I'll just say that, you know, I think that, yes, those concerns and, you know, about the controversy, et cetera, you know, I think that I wonder, you know, I'll say this, you know, I initially had reservations myself, and I thought, well, this just doesn't seem right. I didn't understand it, but I think when you really understood and experienced the power of the gathering, I think it changed your understanding. And I think, like Richard said, I would imagine that if someone really understood, you know, the experiences and the transformation that took place, you can't help but, you know, understand and value the importance of the gathering.
Thank you, guys. Next question is, while it is certainly not the most important accomplishment of the BMG, do you all know how your energy healed and transformed so many white people, including this older white woman? Thank you.
There's, the gathering, especially the BMG style devotional, had an incredible impact, I think, on the racial and I should say the cultural identity of even whites. We have a wonderful testimony in the book of a white grandmother, and she talks about how important the gathering, was to her, what she learned from the gathering, and how that devotional style changed the larger, or at least her particular community, from being so much part of a Protestant white cultural milieu, you see, into something a little bit more dynamic and diverse, you see. And so I've always been amazed, most certainly, you know, first of all, at the transformational impact of the BMG on Black males, but also on the impact that it has had on whites, how they have internalized it. We've got wonderful testimonies, you know, where whites talk about being at the Green Acre youth summer program, or being involved in it, and how the BMG songs and the laughter and the gathering and the hugging affected these were white kids. I interview one of them in she's in the book. She's in our community, and she was a teenager, you see, about 20 years ago, from an all-white community. And that gathering impacted her. When you read her testimony, it's amazing. You see, just to see these Black men loving and hugging and singing, and knowing that she could, you know, she could be a part of it as she just watched them, you see, in the lunchroom, and feeling that she was making a great contribution to serving them. It's a wonderful testimony, and it opens up a whole new window into how the gathering affected racial and cultural diversity within the Baha'i community.
Comment here. Thank you, Richard and Fred, for this book, a wonderful contribution to the history of the cause. Next question is, I recall having intense thoughts and feelings at workshops, camps, weekends that would fade away with time. It was wonderful to keep the BMG gatherings for so long. How can we sustain the momentum?
Fred?
That's a very weighty question, but I think that one of the things that the gathering, in my opinion, was all about was service, getting out and doing things, and not being concerned about your perceived abilities to do certain things, whether or not you were a good teacher or not, whether or not you were good at drumming or not. It accepted the gathering, and the influence of the gathering accepted you as you were. And I think that is what was so wonderful, because you were always good enough at the gathering. That's what was, I think, so amazing. And it was illustrated in numerous ways. Be it if you were at the gathering and you were asked to assist with writing a letter on behalf of the gathering to the Universal House of Justice, you were good enough. If you were writing a letter to the National Assembly, you were good enough. If you were performing, singing at the gathering, you were good enough. I remember one year in particular where Billy Roberts, who I think with his wisdom thought it was important to essentially drag people up to the middle of the room and say, here you are, perform, sing us a song, do whatever you want. And some people were amazing, and some people, we all struggled along right there with them and sang songs, and it was a beautiful moment. And myself sitting there thinking, I hope he doesn't call me. I hope he doesn't bring me up there. And he did, because he probably knew Billy could read you like a book and just read that you didn't want to be up there. But after that moment, I can do it. I can sing. I don't have to be the best. And I think that's what was so wonderful. And so, really understanding that and keeping that and reading these stories, it's important, because when you read them, you realize that not only is this confined to those brothers who were in attendance at the gathering year after year, but it applies to everyone. We are all good enough. And you can see this, there's individuals who have very challenging lives and backgrounds, and they were good enough. And they were the same people that were, at the lowest of low, but also at the highest of the highs, and just contributing to their own personal lives, the service of the cause. I think that's what's so important. And every single person, that would attend the gathering would feel that way. And it wasn't because they were some chosen select few. It was because they got out there, they felt, they experienced the audacity and the, I think really the necessity to just get out there and serve and do what you can do.
It really depends on your perspective. Keep in mind, some of us had been involved in the gathering for the full 25 years. We were sort of ready. We wrote a letter, to the House of Justice, I think in that 2011 meeting, and this is in the book, where we talked about how, we are prepared to go out and serve and to, move out of the fortress, so to speak, you see. So some of us were ready to just sort of bring the experience, to an end. Though it wasn't until a group of us met with the Universal House of Justice, or members of the Universal House of Justice, and consulted, and then, after receiving the letter, we start, talking to or preparing, the rest of the brothers for the, for the end of the BMG. And in the section, the last section, the testimony in the book, you will get various sort of perspectives on how some of the brothers went about grieving. Some took it pretty hard, but others thanked the Universal House of Justice for helping us for so long. Some were ready. I know I was ready. I was ready. 25 years is a long time, and I felt like it was time for us to move out and to do the work that we had been prepared to do for 25 years. You see, and so some people obviously wanted us to go on, forever, but some of us did not, want it to go on. And the wisdom of the house made it clear, that it was a temporary, experiment to prepare us, to move forward. And the house made it very clear that, sure, these problems still exist, but we have a lot more. We have a lot more, equipment. We've got more guidance. We are much more able, as a result of that 25-year experience, to contribute, to the well-being of society. And so not all of us grieved. Some of us, felt that, well, it's time. Those who were grieving, we talked to them, we worked with them, and I think that they were able to understand. Fred, I don't know, what is your perspective?
Well, I remember when I was 21 years old, and I was serving at the Bahá'í World Center. And I remember, I worked in security there, and we had a lot of interaction with non-Baha'is. And in many ways, I had this sense of, I want to serve here, but I want to take this back to the United States, and I want to teach the cause. And so I had these very, it was challenging to just keep serving while I was waiting and waiting and waiting, to go back. And I was kind of gathering momentum. That's how I look at it, to go back to the U.S. And, I think being a part of the gathering and then the gathering kind of formally concluding in that way, it was a challenge, but I think it also presented itself an opportunity. And, I think, like Richard said, the House of Justice really used our words and what we have been, saying and meaning, and saying that we want to do this work. We are ready to go out there. And I think it was a challenge in many ways for, not only the brothers, but really the Baha'i, the Baha'is of this country to go out and just serve in that way. And I think that, if all you were about was just going to the gathering and feeling good, maybe it was a very challenging blow to you. But if you went to the gathering to serve, and that's, that was the goal of the gathering, was not just to just go and feel good, but it was to go and feel good and to learn and to, want to really study the guidance more and better and really be an agent of change. And if that was your focus, I think that you could see how the gathering formally coming to an end was just another step. It was another step along the road of serving Baha'u'llah.
And you know, another part of, in relation to that question, we had regional meetings after the House brought the gathering to a close. And when you read those testimonies, I mean, when you read the letters from those meetings to the House, they are heartwarming, because it shows the obedience, it shows the understanding, you know, of most of the brothers to the guidance. You see, and it's not done in dull resignation. There's a beautiful feeling of acceptance in those letters. You know, thanking the House for giving us those 25 years and saying that now we are prepared to move forward. And so that radiant acquiescence characterized, in my mind, how the brothers were dealing with the final end of the gathering.
Thank you, guys. Next question is, what brought about the move from the Lewis Gregory Institute to Greenacre, and when was that? Thanks.
Boy, do I remember that. Fred, you didn't have to go through the trauma of that, man. You were, but you know, Chris, we loved Lewis Gregory. In fact, I can recall when there were only about 15 or 20 of us, and I felt, wow, this is great. Let's keep it just this, you know, just this size is wonderful. Nice little group of Black Baha'i men, and we've known some of us known each other since the 60s. We don't want it to get any larger. And it was in that Black rural area, and we could go to a wonderful Baha'i woman's house and get, you know, a fried chicken. She had a trailer, and we could get fried chicken, and we could get all kinds of Southern cooking, and so it was wonderful. And I remember when it was decided to move to the, you know, and we talk about it in the book, you see, in '98, I was a little bit upset. I said, you know, we're going to be in an all-white community. And I remember the first meeting we had at Greenacre, I thought maybe the police would come, because we had all these Black folk and these brothers. We were beating drums and we were singing and we were hugging. And any minute I thought that, you know, the state police would be rolling up in there. You know, I didn't know if Greenacre could accommodate that predominantly white community, you know, and I had been to Greenacre many times, but I didn't think it could accommodate, you know, what we were doing. But it was in the book, we talk about it, and we talk, Billy talk. There's a whole thing about Billy talking to the managers and what have you, and of course, you know, the room that Abdu'l-Baha stayed in, that obviously made a difference. And then the grave of Lewis Gregory and Louise Gregory. I mean, those were the obviously the factors that made the move, as well as the space that made the move more acceptable, obviously, especially the room of Abdu'l-Baha, you see. But it was a cultural jerk, you know, job.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to sum it up, I mean, just to be clear, it really was for logistical reasons, you know, and Richard's right. Like I didn't have to undergo that change, but you know, but when I actually attended the gathering, you know, I was living in Maine, so I was one of the few Black men in Maine at the time. So.
Thanks, guys. Next question is, I understand families came at the end of the session. If so, would you speak to that interaction?
Well, I'll just say that there was, I think, really two opportunities. Sometimes on I think the Friday night before the last day of the gathering, I guess the final, the night of the final full day of the gathering, a lot of times we had a devotional portion that was really for individuals, the staff members, et cetera. And sometimes there were community members that attended that. But the last day of the gathering, it really was a devotional for any and all to come. And, that was, I think that was it was very powerful. And you saw a lot of people just show up expecting to just, be onlookers, and found themselves really participating in a way and feeling that sense of transformation just in that moment. That one, devotional that, had different elements of it. Of course, then a procession to the gravesite of Hand of the Cause of God, Louis Gregory, and his wife, Louisa. And it just was, I think, a really amazing experience. And I think it was wonderful for me to have my family come and my friends come to really see and take and be part of something, even if it was just for a moment, the morning of, to understand, what is this Black Men's Gathering? And, why is it that this is something that I'm looking forward to? And when I lived in Australia, why I would pay thousands of dollars to come across, to fly all the way across the world to come to the Black Men's Gathering. And I think that, it was a wonderful opportunity to share the gathering and to allow people to see that transformation in themselves.
That was a great, if anyone had any doubt about racial and cultural unity in the Baha'i faith, it was demonstrated there, because you had all of these people from different racial backgrounds going on that march to the cemetery, and you can imagine the impact that it had on this predominantly white town. Because obviously some people knew, that the Black Men's Gathering was meeting, and to see the support, from the larger Baha'i community for these Black men demonstrated a degree of love and affirmation. If you were a Black participant in the gathering, and you saw all of these people these Baha'is from different racial and ethnic backgrounds coming to support and to celebrate with you, that's profound affirmation. And of course, a profound demonstration to the people around, the non-Baha'is in the town, watching that march, that interracial march to the gravesite. And with police escort, you remember that, Fred? You got police escort, white police escort. That was pretty impressive.
Thank you, guys. This next question, we've kind of touched on this in some of the previous questions, I think, but I'll go ahead and ask it because I want to make sure I give everybody a chance to ask their question. It's, how do you think we can truly continue that spirit with the younger folks and share that fire we experience?
Well, I think the Institute process is obviously, we were told in the last letter of the Universal House of Justice how the Institute process is the vehicle that the BMG should use to address not only the needs of their people, but also of the larger society. And I think that obviously that's very important.
Not to just plug the book, but I think, really reading the book and really, I think, internalizing really just the impact that the various influence of the gathering, had on people, and finding, as Billy Roberts used to say, finding, or adding your flavor to, the institute process, for example. There doesn't have to be one set version of doing a study circle. You can add your flavor to this. And I think that there are so many different flavors even in the book that you can see. And I think, an individual reading that can find, what is my flavor and how am I going to add to this? We did want to just really mention, how thankful that we are that the forward of the book, Ken Bowers, who I believe is with us today, he was so gracious to write. And I think in many ways that just really set the tone of the book, because, it adds a very interesting, flavor to the book, really, that I think is just very, it really sets the tone of the book, and we're very grateful and thankful to him for adding that. Just want to say that.
Thank you, guys. Okay, here we go. Please describe the pylon and the circumstances that would give rise to one. What do you feel was the purpose of this phenomenon?
That was quite a ritual. Fred, why don't you take a,
Sure.
it would be, because see, Fred wasn't used to Black folk, calling on like this. So I always like to hear from my younger brother, just how the pylon affected him, just culturally.
So just to kind of take us back to really the origins of the pylon as it relates to the gathering. In 1989, Martin Varner attended his first gathering. So this was kind of the third, meeting, but this was Martin Varner's first gathering. And he described moments when he was younger, and this is all in the book, but he described moments when he was a young boy, and whenever he was on the playground with his boys, not having a lot of really meager means. Growing up, there was always some child that just didn't have enough clothes to keep them warm on the playground, and whenever that boy was cold, they would kind of yell out pylon, and the young boys would kind of gather around and huddle and really give that young boy warmth, some physical warmth. And Martin described the gathering as a pylon in a way, and it really gave him a lot of spiritual warmth. And so that's really the origins of the pylon. And throughout the years of the gathering, whenever there was a moment where someone needed some spiritual warmth, or even a congratulations, etc. There was a pylon that was called for, and I can tell you, being the recipient of a pylon, it was just quite amazing. I mean, it was like somebody congratulating you, but taking that to the next level, just feeling love and support in very much in a spiritual way, I would say. Maybe encouragement, or just showing support. And it's hard to describe the pylon, but the feeling was amazing.
And Fred, it goes back to this whole notion of vulnerability. Keep in mind that many participants of the gathering came from these Black macho cultures that didn't show a great deal of affection and camaraderie. And they get to the gathering and they're sharing their thoughts and what have you. And instead of that being interpreted as weakness, it's being interpreted as vulnerability. And then you have these men surrounding you and hugging you and affirming you. Very unique. That contribution was something that I'm sure will, has carried on into the larger non-Baha'i, community. But yeah, it was a constant ritual. It wasn't an aberration. It wasn't something that just happened once in a while. It happened all the time, and I think that was very important.
So the next question is, other than religion, what tangible progress has the gathering made in areas such as education, politics, and business for Black men?
We have to, to me, now this is my interpretation, and of course you have to read the book to get into this. Keep in mind the BMG sole purpose was the spiritual transformation, of Black men. However that can be manifested in other areas, but the sole purpose was spiritual transformation, not politics, not business and what have you, but spiritual transformation. You see, that was the fundamental purpose, of the gathering during those 25 years, you see. At least that's, from my perspective, and it seems to me that is also what's reflected in the book. Red, do you have a different view?
I mean, I think that, the gathering was really to empower individuals and to, create, for me, it was to create, men who were, dedicated to service, dedicated to Baha'u'llah, dedicated to their faith, and it allowed them to be better, better fathers, better husbands, better friends, better uncles. And so I think that, making influences in education, business, etc., I think that's a natural, follow-on from the gathering. But I wouldn't say that it's it wasn't an intention that the gathering was to go out there and to change, Black, businesses or, education. But you have individuals who attended the gathering and probably, could owe, a lot of where they're at in their careers, their lives to the gathering, and find that that in that way the gathering itself, played a very important, and impactful, way in those areas, if that makes sense. And so I would say it's more indirect. Of course, there are some, direct ways that the gathering did influence. I believe in Africa, there were times, and again, it's in the book, you all will like to see an opportunity where the gathering on one of its teaching trips actually formally registered the faith. It had not been registered, and that's an example of where the gathering did do certain things like that. Oftentimes in those trips, the gathering, the brothers would bring drums or toys and bikes and generators or different things to assist with the those local communities. So there are ways, I think, some direct, but mostly are indirect.
Mm-hmm. And most certainly in education, the gathering has had an impact. You recall, Fred, I forget how long ago it was, Michigan State, when I was teaching at Michigan State University, I invited Fred and some other people to participate in the Black Religion and Spirituality Conference, an annual conference that Michigan State had for several years. I invited, Fred and others to come in and speak at that conference. So it had an educational aspect to it, obviously. But the key thing was trying to demonstrate the enormous, the transformative power of the BMG, you see, on the larger society from a spiritual perspective.
You guys, this next question again is another question regarding vulnerability. How were you able to release and share vulnerabilities ingrained by familial posturing to survive in the United States?
I think, I don't know if I shared this, no, I don't think this was in the book, but one of the things that affected my relationship with my two brothers and my father. My father, bless him, a wonderful man who struggled to raise 6 kids, and 3 boys in a tough, East Detroit neighborhood, in the 50s and 60s. But my father never hugged us. He never showed any, vulnerability. And my brothers and I never hugged until, when I went to the gathering, I learned to hug. I learned to hug, and I learned to share vulnerabilities. When my father, before my father died, I wanted to be able to show love to him, and so I had promised myself that one of the things that I would do, I would kiss my dad before he died. Okay, and I would always hug my brothers, and the gathering taught me that. And sometimes I would walk up to my brothers to hug them, and they would freeze because that wasn't something that Thomas men did. But from the gathering, I learned to help them to get over that. You see, to show them that being vulnerable was not necessarily a weakness. You see, but a strength in many instances. You see, and so that's in the familiar setting. Yeah, that was key.
And I'll just say, one thing that I think was very important, and it's been touched on a little bit, but one important thing about the gathering was that it was a safe space.
Yeah.
And that safe space did come with really a prompting by Billy every gathering, a reminder and a prompting that this is a safe space and we take an oath of confidentiality. And I think that while you can't go through your life like that every day, I think that allowed the brothers to feel, vulnerable, to be vulnerable, and to feel safe, and that, there were things that you could talk about and you could experience and really just talk to people and ultimately create lifelong friends. Most of my friends who I met in the gathering are now my closest and lifelong friends.
This next question says, with time being a factor, will it be possible to get permission for the men of the gathering to meet again in spiritual unity?
The gathering came to an end in 2011, and we were given the charge of what to do. Now, Fred might be able to answer that question, but I've always considered that last letter and the direction from the House as being our marching orders for the future.
I think that you can characterize it or approach it in different ways. I think that if you can look at it and say that something is now missing, the gathering was wonderful, it's not here now, therefore we're lacking in something. I don't think that's the case. I think that if you view it in a different way, that the gathering existed, it existed and it empowered many individuals all over the world to go about and actually to further serve the cause of Baha'u'llah, and that now is the next stage. And I think that Not that, returning to the gathering format would be we're not going back, but I think that, let's look at really the future. And I think that when you look at the letters from the House of Justice, you can see the maturation over the years. It's quite impressive to watch. You see the maturation of 25 years, from really the meager starts of this process to, really a process where individuals are reading the guidance, they're going out there and doing the different things they're supposed to do. They're serving the faith. And I think that should be the intention now, is how to continue to serve the faith. And I think if we're doing that, then we will see the enduring spirit of the Black Men's Gathering continue on.
Thank you, guys. And this next question, this is interesting. It just kind of follows from the previous question, even though two different people asked it. The transformations that could be learned from the gathering must be possible for the Baha'i community at large. How might this be achieved?
I don't quite understand the question, because the only thing that we did in the gathering was to follow the guidance. We studied the guidance for hours and hours and hours, and then we tried to apply the guidance, to the service to the faith in a larger society. It appears to me that was the approach that we took throughout the 25-year period. Now, the larger society can learn from that, but it's not something that just the BMG folk had access to. We all had that. Even now we still have access to the guidance.
Yeah, I agree. Like the guidance is there. And I think that, one thing that I learned in the gathering is, I think the value of being audacious and the value of making commitments. We at the gathering, a lot of times when we concluded a gathering, oftentimes we made commitments. And you can see that illustrated, in the book. It's quite amazing to see the level of commitment that was put out there. I can think back to in 2000 and I think it was 2007, 2008 timeframe, at the gathering in Maine. The brothers in Los Angeles were talking about wanting to hold a local gathering. And several brothers said, if you hold one, we'll be there to support you. A lot of times people say things like that, but when the brothers from LA said, we're holding one, those brothers were there. They made a commitment and they followed through with it. And so that's one level, but I think also as Baha'is, we are making a commitment to the institutions and to Baha'u'llah that we are here to serve the cause and to really take the Baha'i world, the whole world, as, treat it like we have a vested interest in the success, in the progress of the world. And I think if you look at things that way, then you have no other choice but to get out there and do the work of the cause, reading that guidance, knowing what we're supposed to do, and really being part of it. And I think that's the message that we wanted to convey in the book. So not just showcasing transformations, and we put the book down and say, well, that's wonderful. The goal is for that transformation to be part of all of us going forward.
That was a deep question. This one's a little bit easier. It says, a good question though. Whoever asked that one, the one we just answered. This one is, does the book address the annual pilgrimage to the resting place of Hand of the Cause, Louis Gregory?
The years when the gathering was held in Green Acre, that procession that took place on the Saturday, it is there in many different ways. You see pictures, seeing the different arts, the programs, the influences. It's all covered, yes.
Yeah, and the wonderful photos of the gathering around the grave of Hannah the Cause Lewis Gregory and his wife, Louisa Gregory.
Yeah, I'm hearing these questions and I'm thinking of the book, remembering the reading all of this in the book. And here's another one. Please make some comments about how the Brothers of the Gathering would share the spirit of the gathering with the Green Acre staff on Friday nights. Sounds like they're asking like to recount, I guess how fun it was. Or
So that came from Lewis Anderson, and Lewis was there. Lewis knows all about it. But it was quite a wonderful, I think, experience, not only for the brothers, but for the staff members to really, they've been hearing the different, they heard the gathering, they saw the gathering, they interacted with the gathering in different ways throughout the week. But finally, they were able to really be part of the gathering that evening and receive oftentimes a gift that Billy would bring back from one of the different countries that had been visited, and really just to give thanks. Here, these individuals the gathering is all about service, and here these individuals are here serving the gathering, and we wanted just to say thank you to them.
Yes.
You all seem so dedicated to the work of Baha'u'llah, which is wonderful. Did you also have fun with each other? I can see the joy in your faces.
We don't want anyone to have any delusions. This was 10 years of hard work. Now, Fred's a lawyer and I'm a historian, and we are a generation apart with different Baha'i experiences, you see, and different experiences, as African-American men. And so we learned from each other. This was, so we had fun. Chris saw some of it, but Chris also witnessed some of the creative tensions and disagreements, you see. And so Fred had a particular perspective about how to write the book, and I had a particular perspective, and we had long telephone calls, and we went through a lot. And bless Chris, Chris was there as a traffic cop, you see. But it was, when you have co-authors from different disciplines and different perspectives. But here again, we both love the faith, and we wanted to really focus on the impact, that the Baha'i faith had on these men, and so that was the key. That was the key thing. And of course, we had fun. We we had our moments of joy. Only Chris can answer answer that question though.
It's pretty neat. I was telling, Richard, Richard Thomas was always, to me, just one of those older brothers in the gathering. That's really what Richard was to me. But in this process, we really just, Richard became a friend, and I love calling him and just having fun. It's quite wonderful for me to just be able to call Richard a friend. And the gathering was that. It allowed you to, not only, be dedicated to the service of the cause, but also to, have fun and find in, some individuals who were different than you, some that were very similar to you, to find, a lot of fun. And I enjoyed it all.
Well, I think we'll close it out then. Thank you all so much for this time that you have dedicated to us, and the many, many questions you all answered, and there are many still left in the Q&A box. So people were very engaged and had a lot to say. I think that you all really beautifully shared the spirit of the faith. I really appreciated that distinction that you made, Fred, about that, this isn't just it wasn't just a gathering to come and to feel good. And it made me realize that, this wasn't just about healing. It was actually empowerment for service. And I had never thought about it in that way before. So I really appreciated that distinction. And Richard, my life was so influenced by the BMG style devotionals that you were mentioning. I really look forward to reading this book. When I was younger, I was like, I want to go. I want to go. I know it's not for me, but I want to go. So Greenacre, thanks you all for being here again. Thank you to Chris and the Bahá'í Publishing Trust. And everyone here, please get their book. Maybe your unanswered questions might be in there. And we appreciate you all, and have a great day. And we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Okay. Okay.
Take care.
You guys, great seeing you again.
Okay.